Hey there, listeners. Welcome to Shit That Goes Onto Our Heads, the podcast where we normalize conversations around mental health.
That's right. I'm Dirty Skittles, and alongside my amazing co-host, Rex, we are here to share stories and tips from our incredible guests.
Each episode, we deep dive into struggles and triumphs of mental health, offering practical advice and heartfelt support.
Because no one should feel alone in their journey. Join us as we break the stigma and build a community of understanding and compassion.
Tune in and let's start talking about the shit that goes on in our heads. Three, two, one. Welcome back to another episode of Shit That Goes On in Our Heads. I'm Rex with my amazing partner in crime, Dirty Skittles. And today we have an awesome guest. Welcome, B-Town.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
I love the natural light that's coming in right now. It's amazing. And the plants, nice.
Yeah, for our listeners, she's sitting in a beautiful, sunny room. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting in my little hovel of an office.
And I'm in a dungeon basement.
Yeah, but you guys look so professional. You look so professional. Yes. It's like, I feel like, wow, this is great.
If you'd listened to us an hour ago, no, we are not professional.
Well, I'm a listener to the podcast, so I understand. And I have a little bit of history with, G-Rex. So yeah, I would just expect nothing more, but that's what we love about you.
Yeah, when we do it organically, we're fine. But if we need to record a sponsor ad or a trailer or whatever,
17 takes.
17 takes, and we're both laughing at the end of it. So, I feel bad for our editor. He's like, really? You couldn't do this in 2 takes? No. So, but they take the best out of the 17 takes and make magic out of it. So exactly. I'm okay with it.
It works.
Literal magician.
He is a magician because, you put the two of us together and be like, you want us to read from a script? Nope.
That's not going to work. Or it's not going to sound good if you do it, right? That's hard.
Right. There's a balance there. And we haven't quite gotten it mastered yet, but we're trying every day.
We have not. So when you listen to the host read ads, just know that it took us half an hour to get that 2-minute slot. Okay.
Oh, I think about them. I think I just heard one on the skincare one and I loved that one. And I've heard several of them and I smiled the whole time. Yeah.
Oh man. The bloopers on that one were hilarious. I think normally G-Rex is on that breaks where she's just laughing so hard, but nobody can hear her because she's pulled away from the mic. Right. It's just quiet. Yes. But this time I was laughing so hard I was wheezing because the bloopers were just ridiculous. I wonder if we could release out bloopers.
We should release those bloopers because it really took us. Bloopers. It took us forever to record that, and it is laden with the word fuck because.
Check with your sponsors before you do that, but they might enjoy it. They might have a sense of humor. You never know.
I know Heather would because she saw the bloopers before we released her sponsor, the official ad. She said she laughed so hard she was just dying. We were too. Because we're idiots.
We literally are a bunch of shitheads.
So, B-Town, what do you want to talk to us about today?
Well, I think originally it was just, I've had kind of some experience as I'm getting into my old age that were really kind of shocking. I've been very lucky, right? You know me as far as that goes. I've realized as I get older too, that I haven't experienced a lot of trauma. I'm lucky in that sense, but sometimes it doesn't make me as understanding to others as I would like to be. So apparently the universe knew that and threw some things at me over the last couple of years that have allowed me to learn a lesson. So I thought I'd share some of those things with others. And, one of the main things was it's all around mental health. I had experienced that. G-Rex and I do have some experience with that, in our family history and different friends and that kind of stuff. So not completely ignorant of that. But I had something with a close friend and experience that just really, really highlighted the fact that I didn't have a lot of knowledge in a certain area. Where would I go to get help if someone was going through a major mental issue? So.
Yeah, I remember when you were going through that and just how hard it was for you because you didn't know where to go to get help.
Yep. Yep. And also the secrecy. And that's come up with a second situation that happened. The secrecy around this and the shame and no one wants anyone to know. No one wants to out anybody. But then that leaves the people left to help in a really uncomfortable situation. So luckily, of course, I was just so blessed to have some friends who I could call. I was desperate. I'm calling them at midnight my time and really worried, concerned about a friend. We couldn't get a hold of her. She was in just this manic state, but I knew how depressed she had been. That was what I knew of her. She was just so depressed. So I had never seen this manic stage that she was in, which she was putting herself in harm's way, in a downtown area by herself, talking with kind of unsavory people. And again, in a really bad manic stage. But so luckily, I had a friend who has a doctorate in psychology and is a therapist. And she's like, where you live, do you have a mobile crisis unit? And I'm like, I have no freaking idea if I do. But I'm like, I'm sure I do. But I was able to find it. And so it's kind of similar. I think it's similar to a 988, but for me, it was a resource for me. So I wasn't in danger. I wasn't hurting, but some of my friend was, right? So this mobile crisis line, was just phenomenal because I think we wanted to do an intervention, but we had no idea how to do that. And so I called this crisis line and they just were a lifeline to us for sure. And just a great resource as far as how to handle the next couple steps that we went through.
Yeah, I remember when you were going through that and you had told me about that mobile crisis line. And so that's when I went out and put some resources out onto our website. There is 988 in both Canada and the US, but there's also a website. It's called findahelpline.com. And
Yes.
It lists out every single resource that's available in every single state, almost all cities and around the world. So, because these phone numbers and these emails or websites are not highly advertised. So
no, and I didn't know mobile crisis unit. So that's even something my chair. I'm like, there's a mobile crisis unit that you can contact. So that, but you can call them on the phone or they can come to you, but you just call them and they'll provide the resources. So I would call and I'd explain what I thought my friend was going through. And then they could even recommend doctors that could see her that had availability in the next couple of days. They recommended an actual kind of a bit of an intervention where we would go to her house. And it happened in the next 24 hours, very quickly. They could mobilize. And we were at her home doing kind of a mini intervention. That didn't go well, by the way. But, we tried. But I think it was a wake-up call for her. So that was effective. And then it got all the different pieces. She was keeping everybody very in our compartment. And this is somebody that I've known for 30 years. But she had safely put the ex-husband in his own little area, which was easy because I did not like that person. So I was fine to make him the enemy, the villain, but had kept other friends in different compartments. Well, this brought everybody together. And so that was really interesting. And then we could help each other through this.
Are you comfortable answering questions about this?
Yeah.
Okay. So you have this friend, you've known them for 30 years. And at some point, it sounds like it comes to a head where you realize there's an issue, you're trying to help. Before that happened, were you aware of struggles that they had?
Yes.
And what were they?
So definitely it was around, I would say when I first probably realized it was when she had children, she had bad postpartum. So I knew about some mental struggles that she had. So that was an indication. So I had seen her very depressed. If you've been around anybody, right, it is just heart-wrenching. They're just so down energy-wise. It's just so depressed. You can feel like they have given up. Right. And so at the time, she's around these two toddlers and that was hard to see. Right.
Right.
These are practically, little beings that I consider like my nieces. Right. So very close. So I was familiar with that. And so I had experienced that for, let's say, 15 years. And the good news is she had been able to manage it. So she was on an antidepressant and fairly open about that too, which was good. I just think, again, the more we talk about these things, those are good. And so I did know that. but it had been under control for maybe 15 years. And then the medication stopped working.
Right.
And then I experienced her again, very just depressed, and then very just on a different level because now she could not figure out how to get regulated. So she was really trying. And I mean, she was trying everything, a lot of progressive new things, anything from, I always call it the wrong thing though, but just there's some very progressive things on that are kind of controversial too, using, to try to figure this out. And she was having such a hard time trying to figure it out. That was very hard to watch too, because it's hard to even help someone do that. I mean, because even the professionals don't seem to be able to help her through that. So yeah, I definitely had seen this coming, but I was not prepared for the manic stage because of different reasons. She was kind of self-medicating with some like marijuana and that kind of stuff. And I'm just not into that. So that was not the side I saw of her. And, we really think now that's what it probably pushed her into a manic psychosis, honestly. So she's not someone who needs to screw around with that kind of stuff, especially when she's on other stuff and has so many other things that recently she has been diagnosed with.
So for someone, how you admitted in the beginning and said that you had never really, you called yourself lucky for never really dealing with trauma before. So now you have this friend for 30 years. That's a pretty long time.
Yeah.
And seeing them kind of go through something, how did you handle that? Like, how did you react?
Well, I don't think I handled it well. Looking back on it, again, the secrecy. So I'm like, who can I talk to? Right. Because, so I'm talking to my mom. I'm talking to my husband. Obviously, my husband has had some experiences. He dated somebody who was bipolar. And he was just really seeing things and really talking to me about things. So definitely talked to them. Was now connected with the ex-husband. So I was able to talk with him and seeing that in a whole new light. And then I had other friends around at the time when this incident that kind of blew up. I did have other friends there. And so that was good. And then again, I knew this other good friend of hers that so kind of in a separate, again, she kind of categorized us, but we did know each other and we were friendly. And so she kind of entered in. And so we did have like a small team to kind of navigate what was going on. And so that, that was very helpful.
Yeah. Did it affect you like in your day to day?
Oh, it did affect me. Yeah. So my addiction is probably food. And I think that's in my family history is kind of like the food issue. So kind of that way. Yeah. Very high stress level, and then all the guilt that goes on, right? Because I have a family. So I'm like, I'm taking away from my family to go help this friend. But of course I want to, because she doesn't have a lot of people to help her. So she's single. At the time, she was kind of estranged from her family a little bit. So, I felt like I needed to be there. I wanted to be there. But then I felt the guilt of being away from my, my child, my family, that kind of thing.
Right. Holding the weight.
And so is your friend like a true introvert or an extrovert? And
so that's a good question. That is a really good question because at first glance, I'd say extrovert, right? But she was definitely somebody who wanted her own time, right? So, I would say it wasn't a complete negative when she went through a divorce. She wanted to have her own time. She's very into herself and her own time. Honestly, looking back now, I would also say a narcissist or some narcissistic tendencies for sure. So yeah, that's a complicated, because again, a lot of people I think would just say, oh, extrovert, but it's a little more complicated than that.
Because I know just for myself as an extrovert, we are really good at hiding our depression. And,
yes.
What people see is a completely different person than how we see ourselves. So I can see some of that probably going on in her life too. Like, yeah, y'all are going to get to see this part of me. But on the other side of that, like, we're just done, right? We've gotten to a point where we don't have any place else to go.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, so it was interesting though, because she would let me see the depressed side. And I don't think she recognized the manic side. So again, I want to say that too. I think she was just as surprised at what she had gone through. But looking back, we could see different things, of course, so hindsight's 2020. So you're looking back and you're going like, oh, I was in a manic stage when I was going through this. It just was kind of positive. She didn't wreck her car or spend a bunch of money. So it wasn't really negative, but she was probably in a manic stage during this time. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't see it as manic. And I don't think she did until looking back on it. And I think then it progressed when her meds stopped working. She started self-medicating. And then I think, just didn't, in my opinion, doesn't want to address what the core problem is. I'm not saying I know what the core problem is, but there's something there that, I think we've all learned. I bet you guys have too. If you don't deal with it, it is going to deal with you.
Yeah.
Oh, girl. Yes. Yeah. It gets to the point where you have to deal with it.
Yep.
Because you're sitting in your room on Christmas Day going, like, what the fuck am I going to do now?
Yep. It will get your attention one way or the other.
It does. And, I just thank God for that glimmer of hope. And, the fact that, 988 picked up the phone that day.
Yep.
And that my wife was home. And, then I had Dirty Skittles to, laugh with.
Yeah.
We all deal with our depression in different ways and our mental health. And I will say that like my two healers were sharing my story and laughing about stuff that we probably shouldn't laugh about. It made the days go better.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And I'm such a sharer. So I'm an extrovert. And that's one thing I've kind of had to understand too. So I overshare, right?
So then when somebody wants...
So then when somebody wants to be secretive, so again, I got another individual that's going through some stuff, and this same friend is trying to keep it secret because she knows that this other friend is a very private person. I get that, but my tolerance for that is getting really low because that secrecy is such a burden on friends. It's a burden on her now. It's a burden on her friends trying to help her with her animals that are now homeless. You know what I mean? Like, I am so over that part though now, but I'm such it's easy for me. So I'm trying to understand other people who don't want all their business out there and don't, like if I do something wrong, I usually talk about it. Like one time I keyed an ex-boyfriend's car. I talked about it for the next 3 months because that's my therapy so that I don't fucking do it again. You know what I mean? Whereas other people might never say anything. And I'm like, oh my God, during this dark hour, I keyed his car, and he deserved it. So, he's the fucker who deserves
What's his name? No, just kidding.
Could I have risen above and maybe not do that? Maybe I will. And then do I want to do it again? Let's not do it. Okay. But, so that's me. And I do think that's good therapy. Like, honestly, for me, that works. But so I have to understand that's not going to work from other people. But I'll tell you, I just am over. I want to talk about it, and she's still trying to hide or keep it secret, or I don't know, or keep it to herself. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to say hide, but I'm kind of done with that now. And even like she had someone who came to visit this other friend who was in the ICU, and that young friend who had this person in her life. I mean, this other person who's kind of laying in ICU, she's got cirrhosis. Something's happened. We don't even know what got her into the hospital because she was kind of estranged from friends for this short time. But this other young friend who knows her is like, oh, I didn't even know she was an alcoholic until now. And I'm like, that is the problem. We just acted like nothing was wrong. And now this person is sitting in the hospital bed in ICU. None of us know how she got there. Oh, and then my friend who'd gone through the depression is sitting there going, oh, let's be quiet. Let's not talk about it. I'm like, really? She's fucking in an emergency bed. When are we going to start talking about this? Because we're not helping her. And I don't think we should keep doing the thing we did for the last 15 years and keep her secret. That didn't help anything.
Secrets can be dangerous.
They can be very dangerous.
But it's not my story to tell sometimes. So I do have to watch that. Like in this case, I'm trying to navigate that a little bit and talking about it in a way that hopefully still keeps their trust and honors their privacy as well.
Their journey, right?
Yeah.
And not like everybody is willing to share what they're going through.
Of course. Yeah.
But sharing what you're going through might help somebody, might unlock those doors for somebody else that's going through the same thing.
Yeah.
And you might give them tips and tricks of how to get past what you're going through right now. It's at least that's what I did. But we all know that I'm a fucking extrovert anyway. Like I would talk to the homeless dude on the park bench, right?
Yeah,
My
but
mom's
doesn't it feel good to give them like, right? You start talking about it. And I've talked about it with some other friends again, who like don't know her. So now I can kind of chat a little bit. Then they tell me their stories. Oh my gosh, their daughter is bipolar. Oh, had no idea about this crisis line. I'm like, put it in your phone and you can put the app in your phone in case you ever need it. Like, that's the type of stuff that I want to, definitely be talking about when I can. Because when you share your story, I guarantee you, G-Rex, and you guys have both experienced that. You start talking and you hear it twice back.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. And, I think it's important that we keep talking about it, right? Let's normalize these conversations.
Yes.
Now more than ever, mental health and talking about it is so important.
Yes.
There's so much shit going on in this world. And keeping that to yourself does you zero good. Like I will tell you, I'll tell you my own story. It doesn't do anybody any good. And it just makes you more and more depressed.
It's damaging.
It's damaging. The day I called 988 was the most relief I had felt in years. And like I said, I'd probably been depressed my entire life. But that last quarter of 2022 was the hardest. It was even harder than when my mom passed away because it was a lot. It was a lot of little things that really built into something big. But once I opened up and started sharing my journey and letting people know that there are resources out there and that they don't need to feel so lonely in their own journey, because for me, that's how I felt. I was terrified.
Yeah.
But, once I started opening up and, that's how our podcast got started. It started from a very dark place, but, now we get to talk to people like you, or, we've talked to so many people about their own journey and how they finally found the strength to talk about it. Because I find that it's a lot easier to tell that story over a microphone than it is face to face. Right?
Yeah. Well, and I've loved listening to you guys' podcast because I've heard so many different things that have really impacted me and stayed with me. And so, again, just talking about that and hearing just a lot of different things. You guys had one person who came on and talked about alcohol and alcoholism. And that was really eye-opening to me. And I have recently really cut down my drinking. I think for a long time, I thought alcohol was my friend. And that might have been how and something that you said, Dirty Skittles, on a different one that was earlier on. And you said, doing self-love, or am I being indulgent? Mm-hmm. And boy, has that stuck with me. And many people have said to me, oh, it's so good to see how you can kind of regulate your drinking. And I'm like, because that thought is in my head. Am I doing self-care and being loving to myself, or am I being avoiding or indulgent? And I'll tell you, it's really changed. For a long time, I thought alcohol was my friend. I thought I was a happy drunk. I don't have I could stop. I could go days without a drink. But man, was I a binge drinker. And I did some things, that were quite embarrassing. And I just am like, I'm not doing that anymore. So I love your podcast because it brings to light a lot of different things, to think about. I always want to be learning and trying to do better. When you learn things, you can do better. And so I want to always be doing that too. So your podcast, I'm sure has just impacted, hundreds of thousands of people, maybe millions of people, right, at this point. So that's
Don't
great.
say that. Dirty Skittles gets all anxious.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Never mind. No one's listening. Never mind. Yeah. Dirty Skittles, no one cares. No one remembers what you said. But I will remember that. When you guys were saying that, I'm like, I think that's something we have to be careful of.
It's a slippery slope. It's a slippery slope. And I think it, to some degree, you bring it back because you said something just now that I was like, oh, I'm really curious from your perspective, right? Like you had mentioned that this friend was really good at compartmentalizing different people, right? So for someone like you who's an extrovert and you want to talk about things and you're struggling to navigate through that, how did you feel meeting other people from who had a different version of this person?
It was enlightening. It was enlightening. Again, this was where I think a little bit of narcissism came in. She just looking back, she was really good about keeping us in our place. And I made it very easy. So again, with the ex-husband, I was not a fan. He knew I was not a fan. And yet we had to come together and be on a team. And then this other friend of hers, we both recognized it, because that was the person she would do drugs with. She would smoke marijuana, do gummies, do all that kind of stuff. that was that friend. But then I felt so bad for her. Because that manic was not a very nice version.
Mm-hmm.
The depressed version was not nice, but it fit me, right? I was comfortable with the poor friend. I want to help you. I was probably not the person who was going to be the help during the manic stage, right? Well, or I didn't see the manic stage because for her, things were, I think the marijuana, they told her flat blank, it was taking her into the manic stage. But for that poor friend, I felt bad for her because she then was used to this. And she was like, oh, I've seen this before. I'm not surprised. And I'm like, really? Because I was shocked. Me and my other good close friend, again, same situation, knew her over 30 years. We had never seen that side. So we were freaking shocked. We even said, so we saw the situation unravel at the same time. And I literally said to her, I'm like, if I had not been there, we would have talked each other out of this. We would have said, no, you must have just imagined it. Oh, you're just a goody two shoes. This was nothing. You know what I'm saying? We both saw it and then had other people, seeing things. This is batshit crazy. She's, completely naked in front of other people. She's talking nonstop. Hasn't slept for 24 hours. I could go on and on. The really weird stuff she was doing. That again, by itself might be a good time, right? But all together was really disturbing. Really disturbing. She was describing a family member who was bipolar, and me and the other friend are looking at each other like, yeah, acting like, okay.
Like, ding, ding.
Yeah. And then she proceeded not to sleep for the next 2 days. But really, again, if we had not been there, we might have just passed it off as a one-time thing. But when I talked to this, that new friend, he's like, oh no, I've seen this for years. And I'm like, you're kidding.
Years.
And
wow.
Another friend similar to her had said to me about 10 years ago, when she had kind of entered into the group through my friend, she said to me, you're such a good friend of hers. I can't believe you and your friends don't do an intervention. And I was like, what? I was like, fuck you. You do not know her. You, what? Why would you? Seriously, that is my reaction. And now looking back, I'm like, oh, B-Town, you're such a dumbass, right? I'm like, what? I just didn't want to see it. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
Well, you only saw the part that she wanted you to see.
Yep. Yeah. Yep. And I was good at that part. I was great at my part. And so were all of us until we were like, oh no, we're done.
Yeah. That's what I was going to ask. Is this person getting help now?
Yeah. So the good news is during her journey, right? She was so desperate to try to figure out what was wrong. So she really was trying to figure it out. And luckily was diagnosed with some things that really, made a difference. PTSD, ADHD. I definitely think and I don't even know if she knows what those things are. I don't know what those are. Like the PTSD, I don't know where that's from, but it helps me understand a little bit better. And then I do think she's finally regulated. And I know for a time she was stopping the self-medication. I'm a little concerned she might have picked that back up, but there's nothing I can really do on that.
My question, where I was going with this, is that I'm curious if, are you having to learn who she is again?
I think yes. Oh, yes. Yes. And then that does affect things, right? So,
right.
I don't think it's ever going to be the same, unfortunately, right? I'm definitely seeing her through a different lens. I hope not, because she went through what she went through. So I hope it's not that, but I am aware of which compartment I'm kept in. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I want to be a good friend. I want to be there for her. I hope I always am, but it has changed things.
Yeah. That's got to be difficult, because my immediate thought, and it's probably wrong, but my immediate thought was at some point you would choose yourself over that friendship, right?
Yes.
Now I know.
I will. Yes.
Right.
No, I will. And, my husband definitely is a big fan of that. And I'll tell you, the other friend that went through this, so there was 3 of us, the ex-husband, that other friend, she blocked her. Like she is no longer, she had done so much damage because she saw the manic side that I think was more damaging to her. And because she had some issues too, she was really triggered by all of that. She had to block her. I would say,
they were toxic.
Very toxic. So that could not happen anymore. So that is done. The ex-husband, though, has to interact because of the children. And he's one person I really have a new look at him in a new light. I think he did what he thought he needed to do, of course, for the kids. We really tried to encourage him that he needs to take care of himself and stand up for himself. And the kids are now at an age that they don't need that anymore because he's just was really taken advantage of now looking back, really taken advantage of. So it definitely has changed some things.
Yeah.
So what are like 3 things that you learned that you never knew about bipolar that you wish other people would know?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, it doesn't have to be, this is a good one. It doesn't have to be super, super high, super lows. Okay. So for example, the family member that has bipolar never really experienced lows. So, but he had the condition. And then when it went out of control, then he had a really bad low, like literally walking out of an establishment naked, posting crazy crap on social media. That's an indicator too. So that might be another indication is when you're starting seeing a lot of out of character
behavior
posting on social media or oversharing, right? So even though she was an extrovert, I'm talking some of this stuff was just rambling. Oh my gosh. And the texts that she would send to us, I mean, I'm talking, like a page, like if you print, and actually we had one of our friends print some of the stuff just so we could kind of show her if we needed to, some of the stuff that she was saying, just crazy. So that's one thing. It doesn't have to be super high, super low. I think, you got to watch your family history, so be aware of that. Yeah. And just the damage it can do, right? Financially. So financially, some decisions were made that were not great decisions. And I don't know if she's recovered from those. And that can look different ways too. Hanging around with new friends that, man, I don't think the rating here is appropriate for some of the things I can tell you about that. I mean, I'm talking really,
salacious.
Very salacious, very salacious. So that kind of stuff, just really change. But it wasn't, in some ways, she was super more open-minded than me. So, you know what I mean? Some of that stuff, again, I kind of
justified.
It's like, hey, if she want to do it, if it works well for you, who am I to say? Right? You know what I mean? But man, it was doing damage. And I think she knew it. And that's why she kept us in compartments.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the thing too. I don't know. But, still just, I'm glad I knew the history, some of the history. Oh, and, just again, because not knowing exactly what she was going through, I think some things that I did wrong that really brought things to a head that I wish I wouldn't have done. I did it because I was trying to protect myself, my other friends, put in boundaries, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I think they were very hurtful to her at the time, very hurtful. And
can you give an example of one?
Well, the night this all came to a head, we were just like, no, we're not doing what you want us to do. Nope. You can keep saying it, but we're not going to do it, because that's how she would do it. Like we would say, hey, I'm not coming to your house. Yes, you are. Yes, you are. I want to see you. I want to see you. 2 friends are in town. I want to see you. And we're like, no, not doing it. Again, if we had known exactly where she was, would we have, been such theatres? Maybe we wouldn't have, right? But then I always say to my other friend, I'm like, because she feels really guilty about that. I'm like, I think it needed to come to a head and something needed to give anyway, and so it wasn't, it was pretty bad, like there was, some legal ramifications, some interactions with police that ensued, but luckily she didn't hurt herself. She didn't hurt anybody else. And I think she considers at her rock bottom. I'm a little worried because she still has a house. She still has a car, and now she's employed again. She still has a relationship with her children. She still has a relationship with us. And, so I get a little concerned, especially when I saw her recently, and I think she's, doing gummies again, doing self-medicating. when she told me that she was not going to do that. So I'm a little concerned.
Yeah. I guess when you had mentioned that you guys tried to do an intervention and it didn't go well, what brought you to that point?
We were scared to death. So she had this incident, right? Then she disappeared like the next night. So within about 3 days, she just did some stuff that scared the shit out of me and some friends. But again, I had never seen her in a manic stage. But even the woman who had seen her in the manic stage, she was scared. Okay. So she found herself in a downtown urban area, no shoes, only her backpack, talking to a known meth dealer, bragging to him about how much money she had and how she wanted to help. She wanted to be the white savior to this person. So if you hear, you know what I mean? So that's the kind of stuff she's scouting in a downtown area. So she disappeared a couple times. One time she was downtown and luckily called a friend to come get her. But by the time, and it's again, salacious, lots of details, but they went to go pick her up, this other couple that kind of knew her ancillary through some kind of work. Well, she disappeared, but luckily people knew who she was. They're like, oh, that white lady? Oh yeah, she's right over there. If someone had not helped them, they would not have found her. She was off on some other area of this park downtown. They would have never found her. Okay. So that was one thing. Okay. Then she disappeared another time. She borrowed a neighbor's car, went downtown, and again, kind of disappeared for about 12 hours. That is the night I called my friend. And I was like, what the hell do I do? What do I do? And so she told me about the crisis unit. And she's like, you guys probably need to do an intervention. Well, when I talked to the ex-husband, he's like, what the hell does that entail? Right. What do you?
Yeah. Right.
So but he was all for it. Oh, and by the way, I do want to say the kids are at an age where he was actually kind of talking to the kids about this and saying, are you okay if I do this? Yes, she needs help. She needs help. You know what I mean? So we were getting confirmation that it was a good idea because, then I found out some things that I just don't think, I think the home life had really some things had really escalated there too. Luckily, it's not small children, but still they're children, and having to see this was very scary. So that's when it all came to a head, is we're like, the ex was open to helping us. We were all there together. And I'll tell you, if we hadn't all been there together, I don't know if this would have happened. We all would have blown it off. Or, the ex might have been just too overwhelmed to even think about what he could do. Or again, he's the ex, right? So, again, if he had come to me, I would have been like, fuck you. You're an idiot, right? I had already told other people that they were crazy. No, she doesn't need help. You're going to tell me she needs an intervention? I'm her friend for 30 years. Screw you. You don't know her. Boy, was I wrong. Okay, so that's so some things that we thought, we were afraid she was going to hurt herself, afraid she was, and then financially, I think we knew too, some things were going on. She was, jobs kind of coming and going, but pretty stable on that. She was, again, able to compartmentalize. And I think for the most part, but, so those things were just bringing it to a head. And then we saw an opportunity. You got to know when she's home. So we knew she was home. So we acted right away to try to do something.
And it did not work out.
It really didn't. They, again, looking back, what I would have said with that crisis mobile, they're not going to commit her. I wish I had really made that clear. Hey, they're just here to talk to you. They're just here to, to just see what they can help you. Now, I think she was afraid, though, that they might commit her because she was acting a fool. But she wasn't going to hurt herself, I don't think. I don't think they would have had any basis of unwillingly taking her away, looking back on it. So I wish I would have emphasized that more to her, that we're just trying to help you. We just want you to talk to somebody. We just want you to hear about more resources. She's really resistant to checking herself into any kind of mental place because, locally where we're at, they've had a really bad reputation. And she'd been warned, that would probably not be a good situation. So that was tough. But we were trying to put some things on the record, though, I would say, too. You know what I mean?
Sure.
To try in case it progressed, that we could show that we had tried.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I can't imagine. I obviously don't know the state of mind somebody like that would be in, but coming home and seeing that there's official people there, I probably would freak out.
Oh, she was
like, I'm out.
Oh yeah, she's like, how can you bring him into my house? Oh yeah, we were just
paranoia. Yeah.
Oh, we were the devil. Yeah. But this was good. As we walked out of the house and we're with two professionals, oh my God, I just could have almost like kissed this woman. She's like, just so you know, we would have never been successful. You can't get through to anyone in a manic stage. So there's maybe G-Rex, my third lesson of bipolar. You're not going to get through someone in the manic stage. You've got to, unfortunately, probably got to wait till they come down. And I said, well, how long is that going to take? She's like, honey, 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months. You don't know. And I'm like, oh my God. And I mean, we just were defeated. Like when she said that, like, oh,
yeah.
I mean, the other friend was just like, and I think they could see that. And then the other lady said, no, but you've done what you can. She's like, and don't give up. Here's your next steps. And so she gave us the next 3 steps to do. And she's like, you don't give up, so.
Do you remember what those 3 steps were?
Well, it was possibly to take legal action. So going to the courts and doing kind of just a statement saying that you're afraid that they're going to hurt themselves or that they're not making good decisions. But I learned, you have to do that within 48 hours. And we were past the 48 hours of the incident. But we tried. We did go and we made an attempt. And the judge at the time was like, no. But again, a very positive experience there. They're like, the assistant to the judge came out and talked to us and said, the basic thing, it's no, because you didn't meet the 48 hours. So you got to meet the 48 hours. Keep on trying. Sometimes it takes, unfortunately, though, that's the problem with our mental system, right? Like, I think that, a lot of the people who have done damage and gone out and, shot up different locations, their family members knew, and they might have had 13, 15, 16 of those actions taken. I think it's just it's like something you go through the court to kind of report they're not in a good way. But unless they're immediately going to hurt themselves or hurt others, they can't do anything. The court does not do anything. So unfortunately, but those are the things and then of course they're like, take care of yourself. They're like, you guys keep supporting each other, just don't give up. So that was helpful.
Yeah.
So what did you do for yourself for self-love and self-care while you were going through that? Because I can only imagine that, knowing you, that it was really like hurting you deep down.
Oh, it was horrible. I'm definitely talking about it. So that's good. So I'm talking about it to my husband. I'm talking about it to my mother. I'm talking about it to a couple friends. So just really talking about it, but then getting away. So setting boundaries. So, there was a time where it's like, and that was the other, sounds bad. The other reason we did the intervention, we knew we needed to do it soon, but I did have a trip out of town in, 5 or 7 days. But I took that trip and it was a great trip with my husband. And so definitely made sure I got away to still just take care of the things that I needed to take care of, me and my family. But, just talking to people, talking to the people that I trusted that knew about the situation, was really helpful. The crisis line I did, I talked with them several times. They were very helpful. So those were the things that I did to help myself. What I stopped doing that I hated, though, I stopped exercising. I stopped watching what I was eating. That's where I had made some progress in some areas, and I literally, and so this was probably, gosh, I have to remember when this was, but I think it's been almost a year. And, it took me a year to get back on track with some personal things that I wanted to get back on. So I feel like I'm back on track with that.
Well, you look good.
Well, thank you. I mean, I feel good. I look at, I feel good. I'm like exercising. I'm just trying to be active. I'm just trying to watch what I eat. I got a little girl. I started late. So she's, in middle school. So it's like, I feel like I have to stay in shape so that I'm healthy for her, so.
I hear you.
Hey, Dirty Skittles, maybe she can help you with your owl situation.
Hell of a transition. Why?
I know. I just thought about that.
Before we talk about owls, I was going to say, B-Town, that for me, I relate to what you're saying. Like, if things are weighing on you mentally, it's so much harder to stay on track with the things that you need to do for you to be healthy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it sucks, right? But I don't think anybody has quite figured out how to turn that off and just always be, no.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I concede, like, the things that I do that are not good. It's trash television and eating. And my husband knows when, wow, things are going on. The rails is like, you're watching Housewives of any city, state, or nation. Well, what's wrong with B-Town?
Right.
He's in a dark place. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But again, that's nothing compared to what some other people are going through. You know what I mean? And so it has tried to make me really understanding of other people, but still understanding of myself too, for sure.
Yeah.
But, understanding of what some other people are going through, and that, they're trying to deal with it the best way, looking at a lot of family stuff in that friend's life, like just really repeating a lot of things from generations before her, doing it just that way, first of all, ignoring it, not talking about it, all of that kind of stuff. So that's why I really try to talk about it. I try to talk about it to my family. I let my little girl hear some conversations.
Yeah.
I talk with her about some things, like the recent friend that's going through some stuff. I'm like, let's talk about it. She can't handle the alcohol. She can't have one drink. She doesn't have a good support system, unfortunately. She might have, issues with money or gambling or different things that she's doing that really have caused damage to the relationships. So she doesn't have the relationships like me and your dad do. We get along great. We complement each other. But I want her to know that not everyone goes through that, and has that support system. But I want her to be able to talk about it too. Like
right.
He asked me questions. So she kind of asked, she's like, well, why is that person, in the hospital? And I said, honey, you know what? It's so natural to be curious and to ask that question, but it's none of my business. It's none of my business. So I'm not going to ask that question now. I'm just going to go down and see her in the hospital and see how I can support her friends. But I may never know. And it's really none of my business sometimes. Do you know what I mean? But it's natural for you to ask. But then I did tell her, I said, but I do know this. I know that she has challenges here and there. So I still want to just talk to her about those things.
Open conversations. Yeah, that's good. I think that's a start.
That's really good because, at my age, I'm a lot older than both of you, right? So growing up, we were told not to talk about mental health and shove that down as far as it can go. And you wake up on Christmas Day and it has no place to go.
Absolutely. Yep.
But, having these conversations with your kids now to get past some of that generational trauma or just the stigmatism about talking about it, right? We need to talk about mental health and we need to get those conversations out and we need to be inquisitive and learn how to be supportive and maybe learn how to step away a little bit when you're not quite sure what the next step should be.
Yeah.
I am very thankful though for my family, my friends, my wife, my colleagues who all stepped in after I started sharing my story, right? Because you all saw me in a different light, but just saw me as how vulnerable I was and that I did want to share my journey because I was terrified and I can only speak to my story, but I've talked to other people and it's terrifying for them too.
Oh,
and if you have extroverted friends, check in on them.
Yes.
Because we are very good at hiding it. Very good.
No, and I can say too, G-Rex, she was terrified. After this happened, because so we stayed in touch and we were talking, right, about a couple months after it happened, we got together and I could just feel her. She was totally terrified, a little embarrassed, which I told her not to be, don't be, but she was completely terrified. And she was hoping, she's like, this is my rock bottom, that I hope this never, happens again. You're right. And just all of those emotions, you just hate to see someone going through. But already, I hope, like you said, there's always so much light on the other side. There's things to look forward to that you don't even know are in your life. You don't even know, podcasts for you, right? Would you ever think this is going to happen? Possibly seeing, an African-American woman as a president, a baby being born, running into a college friend. I mean, right? We could probably think of so many different things that you're like, I never saw that coming. So, you want to give people hope. There's a lot of shit right now that you're dealing with. Maybe, you know what I mean? It doesn't seem like you can see through it. You're ever going to get through it. No one's ever going to understand. But, we all have examples of things that came out of the blue that were wonderful things that we were glad we were around to experience.
100%. And like you said, with the podcast 3 years ago, this wasn't ever on the vision board, but,
Exactly.
Neither was a mental breakdown. But, I think that I had to go through all that to get where I am now. And if anything, I'm hoping my story is a story of hope, because I will tell you that life on this side of depression is 1 billion times better than it was on Christmas Day, 2022.
Absolutely.
But I did a shit ton of work too, right? I've done 20 months of really working on myself. But, one thing that you can do for yourself too, just from somebody on the outside looking in, is, make sure that you're doing self-love and self-care, and that you're setting boundaries, right?
Yes.
Because you need to take care of you before you can really go out and take care of or help somebody else.
Agreed.
Those are my life lessons.
Yep. Put the oxygen mask on yourself, then help others. There really is something to that.
Right. I think that's perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much, B-Town, for sharing this story. I appreciate hearing your perspective, because it's not always that we get to hear what it's like to just witness and want to help and not know how. So thank you for sharing that with us.
I love that. But we have some fun questions. Do you have your fun questions today?
Oh, I can ask my fun questions.
Yay. Are you ready? Do you have your thinking cap on?
Speaking of owls, no, I'm just kidding.
We might have to get back to the owl thing, but go ahead with your question.
What has been the hardest lesson you've had to learn so far?
Your ego is not your friend always.
Very fucking true.
And that's not an original thought. That's from Oprah Winfrey. But it really, another thing that has always resonated with me, if I get my butt hurt or if I get my feelings hurt, I'm like, why do I care so much about this? And oftentimes it's my ego. It's not that I really care. And then I proceed like a civilized human being rather than a spoiled brat.
I love that. If you could go back in time and give yourself a piece of advice, how old are you when you go back? And what would you say?
Oh, geez. Gosh, that is so good. I'm probably in my 20s. Oh, gosh, I was just so heartbroken. And so that was probably a time where I was very depressed. I had moved away from like a really good support system. Yeah, and just saying it's going to get better. And you'll be better for this experience, I guess. Yeah.
I love that. I do too. Love that. All right. I have one question. Actually, it's a two-parter. What is your favorite word?
Okay, that's easy. I have one because I almost named my daughter this, bliss, right? It's just a happy word. But Dirty Skittles, the ramifications of naming my daughter Bliss, right? The teasing, the word rhyming would be horrible, but I love that word. Okay, so that's one word. My second one is acceptance. So bliss for me personally, acceptance is what I would hope for the world.
Well, I love that. Okay, so what's your least favorite word?
My least favorite word. Oh, gosh. There's a lot of them, right?
Just remember your mom does occasionally listen to the podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. So, the see you next Tuesday, not a fan. I have friends that hate the word moist, but then I just say it more often to annoy them. But that's not a great one. Yeah, those are the ones that I'm thinking of. Oh, but the one that makes me laugh the most is mount for some reason. So I love that word too. Just, so yeah, those are mine.
Love that.
Thank you, B-Town. God, I love you so much. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. I love you too. I mean, what a nice day to join you on this. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hi, all. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I'm G-Rex.
And I'm Dirty Skittles.
Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. We'd love to listen to your feedback.
We can't do this without you guys. It's okay to be not okay. Just make sure you're talking to someone.